Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another information-packed, thrill-loaded, jaw-dropping episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste another second of your precious time begging for subscribers and get right to it. Joshua Ignatowski says, "Good day, Mr. Dixon." Good day, Mr. Ignatowski. Previously on ACD, you talked about how Marvel Editorial wanted you to only show the personality of Mark Spector in your Moon Knight run. However, if Editorial told you to include Moon Knight's other personalities, what do you think your approach to incorporating them into your run might have been like? Well, I probably would want to solve, is he crazy? Or does he really believe he's three different people? Or are these guises? And I would want to settle that. I don't know how I was never assigned to deal with it, so I'm just thinking now on the fly how I might have dealt with it. Maybe reveal that these other two personalities. I like that he's Mark Spector because that background makes sense for him as Moon Knight. But maybe these other two personalities are people that he once knew, and he's taken on their identities in addition to his own to further confuse people as to his alter ego, much like the complex web of lies that forms the Shadow's alter ego. The Shadow purports to be Lamont Cranston, but if Shadow fans know he's not Lamont Cranston. There's an actual Lamont Cranston walking around. So maybe that, or maybe he's nuts, and we deal with that aspect. But I probably would have cruised along for 6 issues and then done an arc resolving the situation and answering it once and for all, which probably would make Doug Mensch hate me even more than he already does for my run on Moon Knight. I swear, Doug, it wasn't my idea. I was assigned one identity, one personality. It wasn't me who wanted to erase all of your work. Oh, oh man, of course Joshua gets a twin spin. It's easy for him. He rolls out of bed in the morning and he's already got a twin spin going. Let's jump right in. Joshua Ignatowski again with, are there any villains in particular you would have enjoyed putting the Marvel Knights up against had you been kept on the book longer? Well, you know, Doom was going to show up. In fact, Doom was going to show up in the very next issue. The next issue, because I had Eduardo Barreto as an artist, I was going to do a kind of Elseworlds fantasy issue. I mean, just for the hell of it. And this is something that had been done at Marvel previously. It's a famous issue of Daredevil, just told as a Western. No explanation why. So I was going to have Doom show up in a Western version of the Marvel Knights, and he was going to be running some sort of an enclave, like a sort of mini Latveria down below the Mexican border. And I don't remember a whole lot of the story, but I do remember the conclusion. He's basically, because he's Doom, he's defeated the Marvel Knights. He's gotten away with everything, and he's scot-free, and he's going to, continue being a bad hombre. And then he gets a message that there are riders coming, and they are the El Cuatro Fantastico, and Doom is rather dismayed at the end of the story at receiving this news. So, but we'll never see the light of day. And yes, I'm every bit as disappointed as you that story never got to appear. Triple spin for Joshua. Here we go. Joshua Ignatowski again with, what would you say is one of Graham Nolan's strengths in making comics that you've seen him really improve in over his career? Graham kind of came as the whole package. Um, you can look at a newbie comic guy, a wannabe comic book guy, just a young man with a dream. And this applies to everybody, young woman with a dream for that matter, not just Graham. But you can look at their work. They present you a portfolio, hopefully has continuity pages in it. I don't want to look at portfolios that are just pinups. That doesn't tell me anything about you as a comic book artist. Um, so you look at the pages and you can kind of judge, like, this guy's not quite ready. This guy needs some work here. He needs some work there. And then you see guys who they got all the basics down. They just need to do more work. They just need to do 20 more pages, 50 more pages. They just need to it's like a pilot. They need to put the miles in, the hours in, and they'll be great. And when I first saw Graham's work, I'm like, yeah, there's some deficiencies. He's a young guy, but I like everything I see. I mean, I want to work with the guy. He's going to be able to handle my scripts. We're simpatico on the kind of stories we like. I mean, I knew this before I ever met him, just looking at the artwork. And Graham has a grounding in the craft. I mean, he has a grounding in old school newspaper strip artists and things like that. I mean, he's a big admirer of Roy Crane. And if I could say anything about where Graham has improved over time, is that he's willing to lean into the Roy Crane more. He's indulging his influences more. He's indulging his own instincts more. But I mean, Graham's fantastic. I mean, we worked on Skywolf together, and you can look at it and you go, okay, it's a young guy just breaking in, but the story's there, the humor's there, the acting, the characterization, it's all there. He just had to do more work, which he did, and his improvement from our initial Skywolf run to where he goes to DC. I mean, it's huge. Probably has something to do with the page rate, but it's an enormous improvement. And the guy, I mean, he is a true comics master. He's a terrific comic writer, in addition to being an artist. He's very much the showman, and that is a compliment, a high compliment. That he is a showman. I was once paid that compliment by Bob Gale. He told one of my bad editors that Chuck is a showman, which means, hey, I'm just here to entertain. And Graham has that same thing. He's just there to basically, work in his studio basement, having fun drawing stuff, and then he brings you in for more of the fun. But yeah, I mean, did he improve? Yeah, but not like, you look at somebody like Johnny Romita Jr. Johnny Romita Jr. came on, he learned at his dad's knee how to draw. I mean, and he first came to Marvel, and he was like, yeah, he's got all the chops, but there's something missing, and that something missing was he needed to do more work. And at one point, Johnny kind of went away for a little bit. You didn't see his work for a while. And then he came back with like a whole new plan, and he's became the Johnny Romita Jr. we see today. He sort of brought a more of a dynamism to his work, maybe with the help of his dad, because I know I'm off on a tangent, but ask for your money back at the door. I always thought the change in Johnny Romita Jr.'s style from a sort of a dollar store version of his dad to what he became, huge talent, was because maybe he got help from his dad, because his dad early on, well, not really early on, but late 50s at Marvel, was assigned a Western title monthly, and Johnny Romita Sr. wasn't real good at meeting deadlines. Nothing against the man, but he had a hard time with deadlines. I mean, maybe he was a perfectionist. I know he was a hard worker, but and he came up with like this simplified style in order to turn out these Western tales every month, and it's very close to the style that Johnny Romita Jr. adopted post his um, freshman efforts at Marvel. And I always thought, was that something? Did he look at his dad's work, or did his dad say, "Look, I was having a problem, and this is how I solved it"? Maybe if I ever, maybe I'll just email Johnny and ask him that one because I've always been curious about that. But anyway, back to Graham. If Graham's watching this, he's going, "Why are you talking about him? Talking about me?" Uh, Graham's got a superhero comic coming out from Compass Comics, the Fantastics, and I don't know anything about it, but I haven't talked to him about it. But it looks like an extension of his Monster Island, moving from Monster Island into a brand new superhero universe. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of excited. This should be cool. This should be Graham having a whole lot of fun in a genre that he has mastered over time. So yeah, kudos to Mr. Nolan. Brandon Woodall. Have you ever known someone who was a good editor, but not a particularly good writer? Someone who was good at continuity and the technical side of storytelling, but whose actual writing made it difficult for readers to become invested in the characters or the story? No, all the editors I worked with who also wrote well. Denny O'Neil, Archie Goodwin, Larry Hama, Carl Potts. These are people that could write. They were people that were, except for Carl, were writing long before I was writing. Carl was writing a little bit before I was writing. But, they knew the medium, they knew the language of comics, they knew their way around a comic book page and a comic book story, and not a problem. And it's funny, I never really thought about this. All of my other editors were not writers. Don Daly didn't write. I worked with Craig Anderson. Well, some of the back guys wrote. They all did. Scott Peterson, Jordan, Darren, Vincenzo wrote. And they were all good. But yeah, I didn't. Maybe there's something here that most of the editors I wrote for were also writers themselves, because the editors who also wrote who sucked at writing never hired. So I don't know. I don't know what that was about. You take away from that what you will. But yeah, I mean, I could list the guys at Marvel who would touch me with a 10-foot pole, and none of them could write. They couldn't write their way out of a paper bag. They wrote, but their comics were forgettable and sucked. So, but Tom DeFalco, I got along great with Tom DeFalco. Tom was a good writer. Tom is a good writer. I got along fine, but he never edited my work. I worked with him strictly as an editor in chief. But he appreciated my stuff, and I got along fine with him. So I don't know the reason. And the same is true at DC. A lot of the editors who wrote as well as edited didn't really want to touch my stuff. I worked with a lot of guys at DC did not write. They were not creatives. Strictly editorial. Never really thought about that. Twin spin. Look at you. Look at you all grown up with your twin spin. Brandon Woodall. I'm a firm believer that it's possible to read too much into work. What do you think the opposite? Do you think the opposite can also happen? Can unintended themes or ideas make their way into a story without the author or creator or realizing it? Yeah, the subject of themes. People will say, "Well, what's the theme of this work? What did the character learn?" My answer to that is that there's no theme. If you see a theme, tell me. And what did the character learn? They didn't learn a damn thing. They may have had an arc. They didn't learn anything. I think people see themes in my work all the time. I was on a Zoom call recently with screenwriters and producers and stuff like that, and they were seeing all kinds of stuff in something that I wrote. They were discussing something that I wrote that was optioned, and you know, might be at your multiplex someday. Probably not. But they were seeing all kinds of stuff in the world, and it all made sense. It's like, yo, I can see why you did this, and I can say, yeah, well, you know, and I'm not one of those guys who go, oh yeah, well, I'm a genius. I had that all figured out. No, I always readily admit, I guess I didn't mean it that way. I didn't intend that. Maybe unconsciously I did it that way. I don't know. I always find it hysterical. My wife made me watch a couple of Oprah book club things where they would corner some poor author, and a bunch of Oprah and a bunch of her friends would you know have an inquisition where they just accused they would accuse the author or authoress of having all kinds of hidden meanings and Easter eggs and double entendres and single entendres and themes and all this other stuff. And the author, generally the authors would sit there gobsmacked, like I don't know, I don't know why I wrote the guy that way. I just did, because that's how the story came to me. And I'm that way, I'm not looking for a theme. I think the only thing I ever wrote that had a theme that didn't start at the beginning, but sort of grew on me as I did it was Birds of Prey, and the theme there was the irony of the age of information, the irony that so much of the information that we get from the internet is wrong, and now it's even more wrong. AI is like multiplied inaccuracy to degrees of magnitude. So, and that became kind of my theme, and I didn't like intend. It's just sort of in the back of my head, like, yeah, I like this idea that it seems like Oracle knows everything that's going on, but once Black Canary gets on the ground, finds out no, a lot of this data isn't true, and I really wanted to point that out. Um, and it's kind of an invisible theme because nobody's ever mentioned it to me. So it's kind of a theme I kept to myself. So triple spin. Oh man, what a lucky guy! He got a triple spin. That and $8 will get him a coffee at Starbucks. Okay, Brandon Woodall is back with, I'd like to get some Western comics from my dad, but he isn't big on heavy language. Are there any you'd recommend? Well, if you've watched 2 of my videos, you know where I'm going here. Okay, you know where I'm going. Tex Willer from Benelli Comics in Italy. Epicenter Comics, I'm going to provide a link. Epicenter Comics is republishing some of the best Tex Willer adventures, and they're hefty volumes. They're big books. They're 25, $30, but they're great value because they're usually 300 plus pages, and the art is gorgeous. The stories are fun. The recent box set they did, I think it's like $60, but it's 6 hardcover albums in full color. It's a steal. I get nothing from Epicenter Comics except they send me comps now and then. They're very nice people. Igor is a great guy. I get nothing from them except I want to see more. I want to promote them. I want American comic book readers to adopt this company and make it hugely successful so that I selfishly can have more text comics in English. And if your dad likes Westerns, you just can't do any better. This is the best Western comic ever published in the world. And if your dad's not big on heavy text, perfect. Text comics are a perfect balance of marriage between words and pictures. And the action is fantastic. And the stories are allowed room to breathe and take their time, but they're exciting and interesting and multi-layered. And if your dad likes Westerns and you want to introduce them to Western comics, you just can't do better. Cannot do better. There is not even a close second in the show. And okay, Lieutenant Blueberry and all that, but Blueberry is wordy. If you're not like a huge comic fan, if you're not really into it, it's not a good introduction. Tex is a great introduction to Western comics. quad spin. Look at Brandon. Look at Brandon with his quad spin. Okay. Brandon Woodall again with, have you ever read Sax Rohmer's Fu Manchu novels? If so, what do you think of them? For what I understand, part of Fu Manchu's appeal is that he helped establish the archetype of the James Bond style supervillain. Um, Fu Manchu pretty much made him and Dracula made the style for the supervillain. Fu Manchu, if you don't know who Fu Manchu is, he's an evil genius. Uh, maybe he's hundreds of years old, who knows? But he's a scientist, master criminal. He's kind of Professor Moriarty, but bigger. And he's got this vast network. His fingerprints are on 50% of the crimes in the world. His criminal network spans the globe. He's seemingly indefatigable. And just, there's no bottom to this guy's evil. It's just a nasty, horrible guy. And life is cheap wherever this guy shows up. And yeah, he's a great villain. The novels, a little boring, a little slow. I read a few of them because I wanted to say I read some. Not the greatest, and they spend way too much time with the two heroes. I remember Nayland Smith and some other cat that hangs around with him, and they're a little tedious. I got to admit, they are no Holmes and Watson, but I can see why these were popular because they kind of um, uh, they're certainly interesting. They're certainly exotic, and all the rest. And I mean, absolutely, they were an influence. Doctor No, in particular, on Fleming. I mean, he had to have read them. I mean, without question. So I think, yeah, um, um, Sax Rohmer has some input here with Bond, James Bond, and especially with the world spanning, world domination theme, the the master criminal using science and technology, and a guy living like a reclusive life, living in caves and forbidden islands and all that jazz. Certainly makes sense that Fleming was influenced by those, and they were widely read. They were best-selling novels, so absolutely Fleming read them probably as a boy. Quintuple spin. You wanted to reach a quintuple spin, and you did it. You earned it. You have to earn it. It's important. Quintuple spins don't go to just anybody who asks 5 questions. Okay, Brandon Woodhall again. Woodall, sorry, not Woodall. There's some debate over Jack Kirby's original intent with the New Gods. Were they actually gods or simply extremely powerful aliens? Later, DC stories seem to lean toward the former, particularly with Darkseid. But having read the original New Gods material, I always got more of a powerful aliens impression. What's your interpretation? Well, I don't know Kirby's theology, but you kind of get a sense of it from reading his work. And I don't think he would do something as sacrilegious as to suggest that there are gods other than um, God, um, other than the Jewish God or the Christian God. Uh, so I don't think that he was suggesting that there's super powerful aliens, but calling them the new aliens, not as interesting. Also, you got to remember he's coming to DC after a successful run on Thor, who is a god, a mythological god, but a god nonetheless. And so it was kind of natural that they would call the flagship title in his Fourth World book the New Gods. I don't remember in the books them ever referring to themselves as gods. Um, and certainly their power is science based, and they're fallible, and they're not necessarily immortal. They're not certainly not invulnerable. They can be killed. So yeah, I just think they're just a freaky bunch of really really powerful aliens who just can't seem to get along. Kieran Brunkard. How do you keep a grounded story from turning into a documentary or feeling pretentious? For me, it's about making it believable enough the reader buys it, not trying to make everything hyper realistic. But where's the line for you? Um, Honesty. Is the story honest? Realism, particularly in comics and in prose, um, you know, I don't really go for realism. I go for honesty. And you're not cheating the reader or anything else. The characters seem real because they're relatable, because they have real human emotions. I pay a lot of attention to human nature in my stories. How would people actually react in situations like this? And you mine that for humor and drama and all the rest of it. And um, the other thing is, what's physically possible. How much. We all see these movies where these people get 1,900 mortal wounds and they're still running around beating people up. So it's you know these are things you got to think about, and I like to think my stories are a little bit more grounded in reality, if not realistic. Characters get wounded, they lay down and suffer, or die. I didn't read a lot of the vigilante justice genre of recent years. I didn't read any Reacher or any of that stuff when I went in to write Levon Cade. But my intention with Levon Cade was to be more grounded in reality. He'd be more fallible. That he be, if he got injured, he suffered from an injury. He couldn't get shot and keep on going. And kind of carried that over with the Horsemen as well at Ripa. But you know, because I just think that makes the story more believable. Also, you want to stay away from contrivance and coincidence. I hate stories that rely on coincidence. If you're going to have a coincidence in a story, always have it early on, because it's just not realistic in life that you find out that everybody is somehow connected in some way. I mean, who does, except for my wife, who every time she leaves the house seems to meet somebody she knows. But for the rest of us, the world really isn't a small town anymore. It's not a village. It's a world full of strangers, and random things can happen. And I try to keep that random aspect in the stories because to me, that's realistic. Is anything can happen kind of stories. So yeah, honesty far, far more important than quote unquote realism. Etc. Studios. I recently was listening to an interview with Kurt Busiek, and the interviewer had asked him to offer a word of advice on how to break into the industry, to which he replied he didn't necessarily have a great answer, as the comic industry had changed so dramatically since when he made his professional debut. However, given that you have continued working persistently in crowdfunding and indie comic space to this day, I was wondering if you may have any key piece of advice for newcoming artists, writers on how they can break into the comic industry. Basically, it's a question of, how have I stayed around so long? So, hold on just a second here. My door was not closed all the way, and there's no reason to subject my family to my ramblings, although you people seem to enjoy them. Anyway, yeah, I put my longevity down the one. If I had to break in today, I wouldn't know where to begin, except maybe play Powerball and have enough money to pay artists to create my own work. But if I won Powerball, why would I bother? Just buy comics instead of writing them. That's not true. I would still want to write comics. So yeah, I mean, I didn't specialize. I mean, yeah, I wrote a lot of superhero comics. Probably 75% of what I've written has been superhero comics, and I liked superhero comics, but I liked the medium more. I just like comics. I wasn't like I didn't get into this because I love Spider-Man. I got into it, though I really did love Spider-Man. I got into it because I really loved the comics medium. and I read any kind of comics, and I liked any kind of comics, and I was willing to work on any kind of comics. I tried to get a job writing Heathcliff comics, for gosh sakes. Does anyone remember Heathcliff? So, so my thing was I didn't specialize. A lot of guys, and God bless them, a lot of guys, they want to do superheroes or they want to do horror and they really don't want to do anything else. And they sort of like they're always if there's a superhero job available, they're one of the guys lining up to get it. If there's a horror comic line opens up, these guys are first guys there to say, "Hey, here's a story by me. I want to pitch this. I want to pitch it." I'm not there. I'm not in that line. Um Somebody starts up a war comic, I might show up. But it's I I just like writing comics, so I'll write anything. And it kind of became known that you can throw anything this guy's way, and if he feels like he has something to contribute, I don't know why I'm talking about myself in the third person. If I feel like I have something to contribute, then yeah, I can do that. If I like this title, if I like this genre, if there's something there I have to say. I mean, um, you brought on GI Joe. I like GI Joe. I read all of Hama's run on GI Joe. I understood the characters and just jumped in at the time of my life. But you know, I my thing was if you want it done on time, if you want the stories to make sense and the characters to be likable, it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter if they're barbarians or superheroes or private detectives. I'll I'll put the sweat in. I'll put the work in. And because I love the medium, I understand the language of comics, and I like a challenge. Hey, something a little bit different. Um, and because of that, I'm still here. Because of that, I'm still, you know, sought after. The jobs come to me. I mean, I don't go and apply for where I haven't done that in a long time. I haven't pitched anything in a very, very long time. And all of my big assignments were given to me. I didn't pitch them at all uh, because I built up a reputation as a guy who's reliable and loves comics, and that's really what it's about. That is the difference between then and now in entertainment. Back then, the creators who were making stuff, who were making movies, who were making music, who were making comics, loved what they were doing. They loved comics. They wanted to contribute to comics. Today, not so much from the big two, which is why you're seeing this explosion of unbridled passion in the truly independent arena of crowdfunding. These are just people just following, their heart to make the comics they really want to make because they love the comics. And then on the flip side, at the major publishers, it all became very Hollywood, very corporate, very not my idea kind of crowd, where they didn't seem to be, they didn't look upon their jobs in comics as their primary career, but as a stepping stone. And to me, it's always been about the comics. I've written novels. I've written a little bit for movies. Comics. I always come back to comics. It's where I have the most fun and where I feel the most creative freedom. And I guess that translates. That's why I'm still here. But as far as breaking in, uh, you know, I share the same opinion with Kurt. It's always been hard to break in as a comic book writer. It's harder now. Brett Cherubini. From listening to your YouTube channel for 3 years, I noticed your mutant ability to let go of situations where you got screwed over by some major shitheads. Yeah, I'll say it. How did you develop that talent? Um, you're going to get burned in any creative endeavor. If it's TV, music, movies, you're going to get burned. But I was fortunate enough, the beginning of my comics career, to work with both Larry Hama and Dean Mulaney. And Larry taught me how to basically just toughen up, you know. uh, you know, there's no crying in comics. Uh, you just have to expect you're going to get burned. Dean taught me be very, very careful with your ideas. If you're creating something new, make sure you continue to own it. And that's helped a lot. And yeah, I've met some real D-bags in this business. And that's just the nature of it. Jack Kirby is the one that said comics will break your heart, kid. They will. Eventually they'll break it. They broke even Kirby's heart. So because they're run by they've generally been run by people. um I can't even say generally. um but 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 at the end, you go up enough floors in the comic book business, and you're going to run into the money guys, and that's all they care about. And they're the ones that are going to get you. They're the ones that are going to move the goalposts and change the rules and all the rest of it. And you're not going to get what they told you were going to get. And you're going to be sitting in a convention somewhere or sitting in a movie theater crying because they did something with something you created and they made $1 bajillion and you didn't see any of it. You didn't even get credit. Nobody cares and nobody remembers you. And that's what I always guarded myself against. The other thing is the basic notion that um, I'm not going to give you that power over me. Um, I figure these people that have screwed me around, and this is true in like 100% of the cases, they've had to go on to lead their own miserable lives. The people that would do that to someone, that would screw over a creator, violate that trust, um, they're, they're not happy people. And they got to wake up in the morning and look themselves in the mirror, and or possibly wake up in the morning, find themselves tied to the bed and the room on fire because they've also made the people they live with miserable. And that's just the way it is. My compensation for all that is I'm still here. Most of the people who have screwed me over, done me wrong in the industry, they're not here anymore. They're asking somebody if they want fries with that somewhere. So they say living well is the best revenge. I say the dogs bark and the caravans move on. So I'm not going to let it bother me. I mean, why should I give them that part of it? Because if that's the way I was, I would just be eaten up with remorse and thoughts of vengeance all the time. And I'm not alone in that. I mean, anybody who creates comics, anybody who's in the business for 10 years or more is sitting there nodding like, yeah, I got a list. I got a list. Um, Maybe I shouldn't tell the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Maybe I've told it before and I forgot. Larry Hama used to have a list on his wall of his office, and it was a list of names. And names would be crossed out and written over, and people would move up and down that list. And the heading for the list was cancer list. And I think it was Don Daly. We were in the office together, and Don said to Larry, that list, because you could tell by the names on it, there were people Larry didn't like. Don said, that list, are those the people you wish would get cancer? And Larry said, no, those are the people that if I ever get diagnosed with terminal cancer, I'm going to go kill. So that's how Larry dealt with it. So even somebody like Larry had people that screwed him enough to make a list. It was quite a list. I never made it. I was never on that list. And I won't tell you who was on that list. Um, but his name was number one in red Sharpie. So there's different ways of dealing with it. I like my way of just Let's move on. Let's move on. You're not getting a piece of me. You are not living rent free in my head. I'm going to go on to bigger things. And that's the thing. I always say that, when you write, when you become a writer, you need an equal combination of ignorance and confidence. And I was always that way. I would pitch here and there. I wasn't ready. You know, I'm a stupid kid in my 20s pitching this, pitching that, and it's all crap and derivative and it's formatted wrong and everything else. But I walked away from every one of those rejections saying, what do they know? This stuff's great. I gave them dynamite. I put gold in front of them and they didn't recognize it. So that's where the ignorance and confidence come in, because it's the only way a writer can live to have a career is to just keep on going no matter what anybody says, and not being vengeful and not being remorseful is a part of that. Dick Kirby, he asks, I remember seeing a video clip a while back. I think it was YouTube, but I can't find it. Neil, meaning Neil Adams, was talking about how he sold Man-Bat to the powers at DC. He told them that they'd have to let him do it because Marvel would eventually do their version like they did with Wonder Man and Avengers. Neil saved us from a Falcon C-list throwaway bad guy. I had heard that story. And I often credit Frank Robbins with the creation of Man-Bat, but you are correcting the record. Although Frank Robbins certainly contributed. I mean, yes, reversing Batman's name is one idea. Coming up with a way to make it make any kind of sense was another idea, and then that was obviously Frank Robbins's contribution here. So I mean, all hail Neil. I mean, it was brilliant. And the thing is that this is why we saw the creation of, She-Hulk and, it was the creation of Batgirl. It was keep somebody else from having Batgirl. Batwoman, keep someone else from doing Batwoman. So, you see a lot of this in comics. Characters created to basically prevent someone else from stealing the idea. And Man-Bat is one of them. But one of the most lasting. I agree. If Marvel had done Man-Bat, it would have been done in 1 or 3 issues, and they would have brought him back just often enough to renew copyright, and it would have been a throwaway. But Man-Bat, I love Man-Bat. Love Man-Bat. Hey, I'm going to be at the Safety Harbor Comic Fest, September 26th. Safety Harbor, in case you don't know, in case you're watching this from Botswana, is in Florida. It's in Florida, USA, September 26th, 2026, in case you're watching this 2 years from now. And I will be there. I don't do many appearances. I'm going to be there with my buddy Sergio Cariello and a bunch of other guys, Mark Pennington and Elliot Fernandez. And we're going to be signing comics and talking to you and all kinds of stuff. Talking to you, talking right to you, right to your face. Just walk up and talk to us. We're not zoo animals, we're human beings. So maybe if you're in the Florida area or you want to fly in from Botswana, there's plenty of time to get tickets. It's lovely here in Florida in September. And just bring a raincoat. It's been raining all summer. And I'll be there. I'll be there from 10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon or until Sergio gets hungry and we have to leave. So that's it. And if you want to get a hold of me from Botswana or elsewhere, Bruno Bookstore at gmail.com. Bruno Bookstore at gmail.com is the most reliable venue through which to reach me with your questions, suggestions, and the questions this week. Awesome. You people are amazing. I love it. I thought you folks would run out of questions years ago, but you haven't. So anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching and subscribing and liking. And thanks for the, again, incredible questions. And I will see all of you down the road.